Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Jailhouse Informant. We're coming to you live from the historic Scott County Jail here in Huntsville, Tennessee. If anybody's watching, can you just give us a thumbs up if you can hear us okay? We're doing our mic experiment again tonight. So if anybody could just kind of let us know that you can hear us. But thank you so much for joining us. We have a tremendous guest tonight. We're very excited. We've been talking about this for a week now. So excited. So we'll get into that in just a minute, but it's been a busy week.
It has been a busy week. And, we're continuing on with our Women's History Month here at the jail with some great stories about, women who have had, some history here in Scott County, as well as, femme fatales and that sort of thing. So we've had some folks come out to the jail that we've been able to share those stories with over the past week.
Yeah, we're thawing from the cold weather, so that's great. We're starting to get into spring, obviously, so we've got a lot of things that are coming up. So be watching our calendar for some different announcements. So Miranda and I actually had a planning day today. We've got some cool things that we want to announce here in a little bit. But yeah, as Miranda said, this is Women's History Month, and I think you guys are going to really enjoy our guest tonight. So let's get started with that.
Yeah, so we'll go ahead and introduce tonight's guest. I'm going to take a stab at reading her bio here. I do think I need to put my glasses on to be able to see that. I should have contacts back tomorrow. So tonight's guest, she's actually a personal friend of mine. We did go to high school together, and she worked in the field of protecting and serving others for 20 years and has always had a passion for helping others. She's currently an assistant public defender for the 8th Judicial District. In 2002, Shonda graduated from Roane State Community College with an associate's degree in Paralegal Studies, and then joined the Oneida Police Department as the second ever female officer. She remained there for 13 years. She obtained her master's degree in criminal justice in 2013 from Bethel College and her Juris Doctorate from LMU's Duncan School of Law in 2018. Prior to joining the public defender's staff, she served as the executive director of the Scott County Shelter Society and was an attorney in private practice. She's also an adjunct instructor at Tennessee Tech, teaching criminal justice and related courses. So I hope you all will help us in welcoming Miss Shonda Duncan.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, we're definitely excited to have you. So thank you for joining us. And as we mentioned, it's a National Women's History Month. So we thought you'd just be an absolutely perfect guest to have here tonight. So if you wouldn't mind, just kind of talk about your experiences a little bit, how you got into the criminal justice aspect, and just kind of move on from there.
Sure. Completely by accident. When I was in high school, I didn't really know college was for me. I had no idea that anybody like me could go to college because we were so poor, and I had big dreams, but I didn't know that was possible. So I hadn't really drove on the interstate or anything like that. So I knew going away to school wasn't going to be a possibility for me right away. So I went to Roane State and I said, what can I study right here in the county and get a degree? And they said paralegal studies. I was like, cool, that's what I'll major in. So that's kind of how I got into law.
Okay.
And then I remember in my first class, the instructor was talking about law was the great equalizer. Like it didn't matter how rich or how poor or your status or whatever, the law makes everybody equal. And I was like, oh, this is for me. I'm in love. And that was it. I was sold.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. Yeah, I heard that Roane State actually has a really good program for criminal justice, right?
Oh, yes, it's wonderful. And they were so friendly and helpful to me figuring out like what's the best for me. That just changed the game for me.
Okay. So you were starting as paralegal in law, then how did you get into actually becoming an officer?
Well, so there's a requirement when you get your paralegal degree that you do an internship. So I interned with the district attorney's office, and William Paul Phillips at that time was the district attorney. So I just, did what they told me to do. And then I got a call from the chief of police that said, hey, William Paul Phillips said that you'd be a wonderful officer and we have a position open and would you be interested? And I was like, oh, I'm job hunting. That'll do for a little while. So my first day, we got in foot pursuit, and I was like, okay, this is my thing now. I will never, I remember going home and telling my husband, I will never do another job. This is it for me.
Oh,
wow.
And I
cool.
later told Mr. Phillips, I was like, hey, that phone call that the chief made, that you told him about me, that changed my life. And he was like, what are you talking about? He didn't even remember. That had such an effect on me.
Now, one of the pictures that we see here, it has you talking to kids and such. So, obviously being a police officer is not just about the foot chase, right? It's about the community interaction. So really kind of maybe expound on that a little bit.
Oh, community policing was my favorite. And in my criminal justice classes, we talk a lot about community policing because just like going into stores and talking to people and drinking coffee with them, so they see that you're not just trying to put people in jail. There's so much more. There's such a police officers are there for help, So we went into the schools and talked to the kids, and right there they taught me to teach them how to handcuff. So that's
because every kid needs to know that.
Every kid needs to know that. They love to be handcuffed, and so when we would bring them in, they would do tours through the dispatch and the police department, all that stuff. So I would always take them through and talk about the fingerprints and stuff, and they would be handcuffed in the police department and go into a cell. So we did all those things.
Well, and that's one of the things too that always kind of surprised me when you would be kind of out in public and you'll hear a parent sometimes say when they've got an unruly kid there, they're like, oh, there's a police officer, be careful, I'm going to tell them and they're going to take you away to jail. And I always hated hearing that because the police are the helpers, and I feel like that kind of puts, a weird thought in a kid's mind, not so much as someone that is there to help, like with what you're doing at the schools, but that they're going to take them away to jail.
Oh, that was one of my biggest pet peeves. And I would always tell a parent this. So if your child is lost in the woods and I'm yelling for them, you want them to come to me.
Mm-hmm.
You want them to see that uniform and know that's somebody that's going to help. So please don't make them afraid of me.
Mm-hmm.
When they see that uniform, that's somebody that can help them.
Absolutely. So how long have you been an adjunct professor?
Oh, let's see. Well, not hardly a year, I don't think.
Okay.
So I've done it, I think, 3 semesters.
Oh, very cool.
Well, they're short semesters with this class.
Gotcha. And so from the law enforcement side, then you moved over back into actual law, right?
Yes. So I realized I was getting very old and I couldn't jump over buildings in a single bound anymore. I needed something else. So I decided in my old age to go back to law school, but my kids had a really hard time with it. They didn't want me because my youngest one basically came home in a patrol car, so he had a hard time with me leaving. So I waited until he was out of elementary school and started the middle school, and then I went back to school and it was hard because I had to quit my job. You can't work when you're in law school.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a big risk, but I felt led, and when I get something in my head, there's no rest until I do it. So I had to go.
Gotcha. So what is, having been on the law enforcement side and then moving over into the district attorney side, how did that first career really help you or hinder you in this second career?
Well, I made some great relationships when I interned with the district attorney's office, and then great relationships when I was in law enforcement, and then from the public defender side also. These people are wonderful. So just every career that I've been in, I have got a chance to know the people in the court system. So the clerk's office, I know everybody that's in there. I know the officers. So, when I read a warrant that an officer has written, then I know that officer personally, so I can go to them and I can just talk to everybody. I think it gives me an advantage because I know all the players.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about being only the second female officer with the county or with the Oneida.
Oh yeah, well that was fun. When I first started, and I know this sounds so crazy, but when I first started, I could not order a female uniform, or I had to order male uniforms, and I had to go get them tailored. So the boots, I couldn't get the combat boots that everybody else. I had I had to order men's. So I mean,
Wow.
it was just very different. And I remember Mike Cross giving me a speech on a lot of them. He was harder on me than anybody.
Oh.
But I'm so thankful for that because he told me, he said, they're not going to see you as a woman. They're going to see you as backup.
Yeah.
And so he said, you're under a microscope. People are going to be watching you. So pay attention. And they would be a group of officers kind of sitting, having a meal together. And at first I couldn't do that. I couldn't be the woman that, sat with them. So I had to build it up so that they would see me as, I'm your backup. I'm not a woman.
Mhm.
And then once that happened, once we built that rapport, then it was fine.
We've got a comment over here in the comments here from Cindy Louse says, I know Shonda. She was 4 years old and she's a good person.
Oh,
thank you, Cindy. I know a lot of folks know you, especially in all of your roles that you've done here in the county. I mean, you've had a lot of interaction with a lot of people, and a lot of people think very highly of you and what you do, and they see you as an advocate for what you believe in and what's important.
I appreciate that. That means a lot to me. I hope that's the legacy that I will.
Yeah. Now, with your career, did you know that you wanted to stay in Scott County? Was that always your path, or did you ever consider going to another jurisdiction or another county or another state?
Well, there was moments in law school where, I cried myself to sleep over a contracts exam or something, and I would think, oh, I'm going to make millions one day, and I'll move away, and it's going to be great. But I just could never leave home. This is where I belong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's something really comforting, right, about that, about just knowing your background, where you come from. I know I see it with Miranda since we've started doing this, right? Everybody kind of knows her and her background and her family, for better, for worse, her family background. So,
Yeah.
There's a lot to be said for that community tie.
Yeah, it is.
And so this picture that we have pulled up on the screen, this is you speaking or advocating, correct?
Yes. Yeah, and there's a lot of that. There's a lot of pictures like that. So I would be asked to come and speak about domestic violence and things like that. I've went and spoke at graduations, and we were involved in a campaign, I think last year, with the Children's Center. We partnered with them, Strong Women, Strong Futures. So I went and talked about how college changed my life. And I think this one specifically, this picture was from speaking maybe at a school about domestic violence and how to reach out for help if you're struggling.
Mm-hmm. And let's talk a little bit about that, about your work at the women's shelter. Can you tell us just a little bit about that as a whole, and then your role there as well?
Sure. So that was another one I fell into by accident. My whole life has just been accidents that worked out for me. So while I was in law school, previous to that, when I was an officer, the director of the shelter reached out to me and said they needed an officer on their board and asked me to join the board. So I did, and we went to the meetings and all that stuff. And then, so I stayed on the board for a long time. And while I was in law school, you can't work or anything, but I still was able to go to those meetings. And the board got together. We were looking for a director because the new director had resigned, and they asked me to step in to fill that role until we could find a permanent director. And I went in with the intention, I'm just going to stay here till we find somebody, and that lasted for 4 years.
Well, it just goes to show, it's really fascinating to me, just your progression and just how each job has led to the next job, and how your experience in that has been one that's really helped, because that law enforcement side, the side, the victim side there in the shelter, and then as being a public defender, both of those sides. I mean, I can only imagine how that helps with what you do.
It's a great, I don't know how to explain it. When I hear somebody, when a client's telling me about their struggles, I understand, and I know different resources that we have available that maybe somebody that has not had all the positions I have, that maybe would know that, a shelter can do this, this, and this, or hey, there's food banks that, if you're struggling, here's the ones that are open on these days of the week, just things like that have been helpful.
Mm-hmm. Well, since your career starting from law enforcement to what you're doing now, I mean, where has the progression in Scott County gone, especially towards women? Have you seen more of a shift of those that are willing to help, that there's more resources available for women who may need that type of assistance?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Just like I can ask, when I get on Facebook and say, hey, we have somebody that's in need, immediately I would be flooded with messages, people wanted to help. And I've always had the notion that people really want to help, they just don't know how.
Mhm.
So I tell them how.
There you go. Atta girl.
Yeah, and I mean, you do see that a lot around here, that people are, the pride in the community and the pride in being to help, but maybe it seems like they may not, it may appear they don't want to, but like you said, they maybe just don't know how.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
We have a wonderful community. Everybody, even like there's people that'll reach out and say, hey, and even though I'm not with the shelter as their director anymore, they'll still reach out. I got a call yesterday if somebody said, hey, we want help, what can we do? Oh, here's the number, and this is what they likely need, and this is how you can do it.
Mm-hmm. With your 3 careers or jobs that you've had in your career, that must be really kind of hard. I mean, because a lot of the things you see and a lot of the things you experience, how do you cope with that? And how, at the end of the day, do you keep your positive attitude? You're always someone that has a smile, that is very positive. How do you do that in positions like that that are really kind of, very hard in that sense?
I don't know. It's weird. I remember a life-changing moment for me was, it was Brett Bond, who has been a police officer, 30, 40 years, and I was brand new, and I remember saying to him something about something that we had seen, and it was awful, and I don't remember what the situation was, but he said to me, and I will never forget this, he said, if you feel like you can do something or something should be done, do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, oh man, I am 911,
Mm-hmm.
we are who you call. We have to do something. And from that moment on, I don't know if I just didn't carry it around with me or how I coped with it, but let's jump in and get it done, and then we'll talk about it later. And that's a weird way to say it, I guess. And I do have a dark sense of humor, and maybe it comes out that way.
Most law enforcement officers do. I mean, I come from a law enforcement
nurses.
family, so
Yeah.
they have a dry and dark sense of humor. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that you have to. I think it kind of helps you cope with what you see on a daily basis, right? Because you do see sort of the underbelly of things that most people don't have to see.
Yeah.
So I think that is a coping mechanism.
And 2, I could only imagine, like with the women's shelter and stuff, seeing and experiencing, when you really want to help someone, you can only do so much, and I would imagine that would be heavy.
It is, but it has to be done, and somebody has to do it. So we can't just, it's great. We have to take self-care days, and we tried to do that, and we tried to help each other, and there's a lot of laughing and crazy jokes and jumping out and scaring each other in the office that we do to get by, but somebody has to do it, so we can cry, but then it's time to get to work, so let's go.
That's right. It's a wonderful way to look at it, is providing that service and helping.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
So now I was just going to say, so again, kind of looking over your expansive career here. So what would you categorize as one of your most amazing achievements, or one that you're most proud of? I mean, obviously you can have a lot to be proud of, but is there something that really stands out?
I think this is going to sound crazy, but just surviving.
That's a great answer.
It's a great answer.
Because I was not supposed to. I get emotional. I was not supposed to. I was a teenage mom, and I came from poverty, and I wasn't supposed to be one of those kids that went to college, and I survived and I made it. So I think that and my children are my biggest accomplishments.
Absolutely.
Well, and you thrived at it. You didn't just survive, and not to sound cliche, but you did. I mean, in doing that, because like I said, I'm always impressed at seeing your Facebook posts and I remember when you said you were going to go to law school, and, when you left, and there was, you could tell that the guys and females on the force there, that they like you and was going to miss you. And then I remember you making that announcement, and then you did it. So that's just awesome.
I appreciate that.
So looking at law enforcement, obviously, because we're in the jail and looking at law enforcement and stuff, where do you see women now in the field of law enforcement? Do you think that there's more opportunities for them, or?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
they're everywhere now. I remember being on stops and people, because women weren't a thing back then, and I would be on a car stop, and there was people that would pull in behind me and offer me a job while I was on a stop. And I was like, "What? You're crazy." Of course, I was but because there was no women. So if you were a woman and you had a degree and you were a certified officer, you could go to work anywhere. And now, even when I go back to the jail, there are corrections officers everywhere that are females. There's administration that are females. That just wasn't a thing back then that I saw anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. My brother is actually, he just retired. He was 32 years in Orange County Sheriff down in Florida. And his last few years, he was in motors. So they had a woman, and one of the requirements is you have to be able to pick up your bike, right? So one class, one of his classes, the first time he had a woman come in, he said, as long as she can pick up that bike, and by golly, she did it. So she was the first one in his unit that he was able to teach. But I think to your point, it really is something that, decades ago, it really was kind of frowned upon and seen more as a male dominated field, obviously. But, I think it's people like you that really kind of break through that, that really, really paved the way for other women, especially here in Scott County.
Yeah.
Yeah, it hurt though.
I'm sure.
There was a lot of fights, and we were on a call one night, and this guy that always, there was always a fist fight when we would go to his house. And there was me and 2 other officers, and he said specifically to me, he said, you want to step out because we're about to fight. And I was like, no way, because if they're going to bleed, I'm going to bleed. So it hurt, but.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but, being an officer in a county where pretty much everybody knows you or knows your family or something, I think that does call for a different type of policing tactic, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not, you're not in somewhere like New York or Atlanta where you run across a perp and that you've never seen them before. They don't know your background or your history. But being here, you could be arresting your cousin or pulling over your neighbor or something like that. So I think it does make a different dynamic.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And if you treat people with respect, they treat you with respect. And it very rarely was I treated badly because I was a female. Very rarely.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. So let's talk a little bit about the jail here. So while you were an officer, your time was here at the jail, correct?
Yeah. Well, I brought prisoners down here quite often. Yeah. I never made it past this area here though, so it's fascinating to see upstairs and stuff.
Yeah, we always love whenever people who are officers or who worked here at the jail or, worked on the streets or whatever, that had to come in. We're always fascinated hearing their stories and different experiences that they had here.
A memory just hit me. You asked me earlier what that room was. That was an interrogation room because I questioned a man in that one time.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty much every time somebody comes in here that says that, their family was an officer or they were an officer, we always ask them, we're like, okay, so what were these rooms when you were here?
Yeah.
Because, for the most part, it's like, the rooms changed, with every administration that they had. So it's always cool to hear that.
Yeah.
So,
fascinating.
Yeah, it is a little bit different from the Justice Center that they have now, obviously. So these are a little bit more compact, but the current Justice Center is actually it looks pretty nice. Obviously I've never been inside, but it looks pretty nice.
I've been in there a lot. I have not been in the jail as much in my life until I became a lawyer, and I spend most of the time in jail.
Well, yeah, I'm sure.
That's interesting that you spend more time there as a lawyer than as an officer.
Yeah. But I know all the officers, so when I go back there, well, in Scott County, I know everybody. So when I go over there, they're like, "Hey, you remember that time that we got that pepper soup?" And I'm like, "Nope."
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Well,
until I get out of here.
Well, Cindy says that Jerry said he has to walk a thin line when you're around.
Jerry's my husband.
Good answer, Jerry. Oh, that's fantastic.
You can see here. I'm just going to check and make sure I've not missed. You want to go ahead? I'm manning the comments over here, so just making sure I didn't miss anything.
So now that you've crossed the line and become, an educator as well, there at Roane State, thinking back on when you were taking classes and stuff, what are some of the differences that you now have to teach? Obviously, being in the field allows you to be much more conscious of what you're teaching your students, obviously, but what are some of the differences that you're teaching compared to what you learned when you were a student?
Well, there was a lot of, I know it's weird to say a lot of book learning when you're in college, but there was a lot of that and not really a whole lot of practical advice that I got that I remember that, stood out when I was a student. So my students, first thing I want to know is, how are your other classes going? Are you struggling? What's going on? And every semester I've had a student who says, I just don't know if I can go on. So, continue with classes because they're just overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
And especially with COVID and everything that's going on, it's overwhelming. So I can just draw from my experience, as trying to make it through college because I had a baby and how that I made it. And, we can just work through it. Do you need, can I help you with something you're studying on? A test or whatever? Is there something I can do in another class? So I try my best just to look at the human side of it, and there's more to it than books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think, obviously the hands-on, especially going into criminal justice classes or, going into law school classes, you obviously have to have that practical knowledge and that practical experience to be able to relay that to your students. And I think there are some that are in there that have tenure or whatever that really haven't worked in the field. Mm-hmm. So for you to be able to bring that experience, a very lengthy experience from different facets, I think your students are very lucky to have somebody like you teaching them these things.
My favorite quote that a student said to me was last semester. I had a student, we were I think it was last semester, we were going through, and it was kind of we were getting ready to have a break in class or something, and she was like, I love to look on mobile patrol now because I know what it all means. And I was like, what? You know that I have succeeded as a professor. If you pull up mobile patrol and you know what all those things mean, then I've done my job.
There you go. So as an officer, what one story stands out, or what one, takedown, or what really stands out as a memorable event?
Oh man, so many, but my favorite, I think. Oh, there's going to be a lot of officers get mad over this. So I did not, like I said, they treated me like a backup all the time. But there was one occasion that there was a guy that they had been chasing all day, and he ran like a deer, and nobody could catch him. And so they saw him over at the housing projects, and so there were several officers that went over there. And they told me to go up on, I think it was Dean Hill, and kind of watch the area there. Well, I went up there and watched the area because, they're all chasing and running, and he would outrun them. They'd get in the patrol cars, and somebody call in and say they spotted him here, and they'd take off again. Well, they forgot to tell me they left. So I'm up there watching. They're supposed to be all running, but I can't see them from where I am because I was too naive to realize I needed to go down the road. So finally, somebody radioed that they were over at Sanka Apartments, that he'd been spotted over there. So I thought, I'm not doing this again. Where could he be going? And it hit me. I knew where he was going. He was on foot. I knew where he was going. So I got on the 4 lane and went up in the woods, and I went and knocked on the door because there was a house there, and I said, lock your doors and tell them what's going on. So I just went in the woods and waited, and they ran him to me.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So then, I always tell them I outran 8 minutes.
There you go.
Atta girl.
You want to just run him right to me, and they did. So then the fair was in town. So I remember after work, I took my kids to the fair, and the chief of police got on the radio and told them all. He was like, hey, if you need anything, holler at Shonda. She's out.
Nice.
All-time favorite.
There you go. Nicely done. See, women work smarter. I love
That's
it.
right. That's right. Work smarter, not harder.
That's right.
That's why we need more women on the force.
Right, yeah.
How many women are on the force now? Do you know?
I know Oneida has 2. I don't know how many the county have right off. I think they have 2 detectives, but I don't know how many road officers.
Okay. Huh. It'd be interesting to know. We'll have to find that out.
Yeah.
Especially for Women's History Month.
I was going to say, it's definitely some stuff to find out for Women's History Month.
So what's next in the life of Shonda?
Oh, I don't know. I'm really liking this job at the public defender's office. Link Jeffers is one of those genuinely good people. So, and all the people that I work with, it amazes me how brilliant they are. I'm just in awe of them. I love being in a room where this is going to sound cliche, I guess, but never be in a room where you're the smartest person, you know, and just listening to them talk. Fascinates me. You know, I work with Bill Jones and Latasha Blossom. She used to be a Bryant. She's brilliant.
Very cool.
Very cool.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, so we really appreciate you coming on tonight and you know, sharing your stories and that sort of thing. Do you have the number for the and this, I hope I'm not putting you on the spot, for the women's shelter, and that if anyone does need help or anything, I can put that here in the comments.
Sure.
If there's something, if somebody needs help.
There's a 24/7 crisis line that somebody always answers the phone, and that's 423-569-3333.
423.
What was the last one?
3333.
That's easy.
Yeah.
So we've got that, and we'll pull that as soon as that loads up here. Put that right there at the bottom. If anybody needs help or needs assistance, you can dial the number there on the screen, and there'll be someone there to help you. I think that's always important to get out there, just so that people know there is someone they can call.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's no charge. You know, when I first started, there would be people call and say, how much does it cost to come and stay there? They cover everything. All, you know, the lights. I mean, all your basic needs, they cover it, and there's no charge.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful.
Now, is that Scott County, just for Scott County?
Yes, but there's shelters all over Tennessee.
Mhm.
And if they need to get out of Scott County, we can help with transportation. I say we, yeah. They can help with transportation and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful.
Very cool. So real quick, what do you teach over at Roane State?
I teach with Tennessee Tech.
I'm sorry.
No. So last semester was juvenile justice, and I've taught. I'll teach corrections again this fall. So I've taught juvenile justice twice, and I'll teach corrections twice.
Oh, fantastic.
Very cool.
I like it.
Like it. Yeah. Let's see here. And we've got Amy on there. She says, "Thank you, ladies, for another great podcast. Very proud of you, Shonda."
Oh, is that Amy we graduated with?
It is.
Oh,
It
is.
It is. And that's been one of the most fun things about coming back, because I've been gone from here, since 98. And
Mhm.
so to be back here in 2021, it's, I love it. I love seeing the folks and seeing what everyone's doing and just really proud of the people I went to school with. I think they just released our graduation video last week. I don't know if you saw that.
You guys got old.
If anybody wants to see a little Miranda give a valedictorian speech,
She was so smart. Still is smart. It's just way smarter than me.
Well, thank you.
nah.
And it brought back so many memories.
Yeah. Well, again, Shonda, thank you very much. We really appreciate you joining us tonight, and just congratulations on everything that you've done and the way you've been an advocate for Scott County. It really is inspiring.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we're going to take Shonda off here for a few minutes, but we are going to do our segment that everyone likes and enjoys, our This Day in History. So we'll get with you, Shonda, here after the podcast, and maybe do a little bit longer tour of the jail here. Okay. Let me get this pulled up here.
All right.
Okay.
So today, the random newspaper that we grabbed was from April 2nd, 1992. This is the Scott County News. And again, they really do the interesting thing where they put a really big picture next to a headline that's a little bit different.
Yeah.
So the headline is Explosion, Fire Destroys Business and Injures the Owner. The owner of Wick Battery and Services on Annandale Road was seriously injured Wednesday afternoon during explosion and resulting fire that completely destroyed his place of business.
And it's butted right up beside of the Miss Hollander candidates, which again, kind of strange how they do their layout just a little bit. But I know we've got a lot of familiar faces here in this picture over here on the left, and one of them is our local postmaster.
Yeah, Misty Coffee. She's in this. She's our postmaster. I just saw her today mailing a package. Leslie Burge, Janine Crowley, Rhonda Smith, Carrie Waters, Teresa Newport. So this is actually this newspaper here today actually has a lot of people in it. There's a lot of stuff going on with high schools and elementary schools. So we're going to be seeing a lot of faces today on this one.
Yeah, being April 2nd, it was kind of that time frame. School was winding down. Folks were getting ready for all the pageants that were coming up for the fair, and then also, like the GPAs and that sort of thing. So a lot of grade type clubs and such. So we'll get to those here. So as she said, the county students are set to compete in a series of pageants at Scott High. And so students from the Scott County schools will compete for the titles of Little Miss Highlander, Miss Junior Highlander, and Miss Highlander during a series of pageants set for tonight, which is on Thursday.
We got a downtown revitalization project gradually beginning to take shape. With so much interest in the area, they decided several years ago that a portion of Main Street was badly in need of a facelift. So they were going to go ahead and start a revitalization project in downtown Oneida, which I think they succeeded in, and I think they're kind of going through a revitalization now, right? Just kind of
on
bringing
Main
back
Street.
some of Main Street in Oneida.
Yeah, it says that Ms. Kazee says Oneida Mayor Denzel Pennington has agreed that the town will redo the sidewalks in the area when the time is appropriate, and the city will furnish the labor if the merchants supply the concrete and other materials. And it looks like they were going to be fixing up certain buildings like where Young's Jewelry is and all of that. So yeah, with the revitalization of main streets throughout the state, Oneida is doing some pretty cool things with their Music on Main and all of that with their what's going on.
Yeah. So we had several fundraising events for little Jeffrey Wayne Duncan, who was in need of a transplant. So they've raised about $10,000 for him at this fundraising event. So that was kind of cool.
And then a bunch of students were attending the Drug Free Tennessee Conference in Nashville. And so yeah, that was part of a twofold challenge that the Community Alliances assess the level of programs and resources in place within the community in the areas of drug community alliances. Let's see, and then also
that's part of the revitalization, the interior of renovated structure. That just kind of goes along with the revitalization.
And also, where did I see that? Let's see, I think it's on the next page.
Nope, that's still the front page.
Yep. There we go.
There we go.
I took some individual pictures but then found out I was able to zoom in here. So we've got our bulletin board of activities that's coming up for the next week with the Morgan Scott Project issuing the Good Earth Garden vouchers at the Oneida City Park. One voucher per family. And they've got some workshops planned. Let's see.
You know, that one over there speaks to VOTEC class. They're speaking on air conditioning and refrigeration. Last week we had microwaves. So I guess we're covering everything now.
That's true. Let's see here. Ace is having a sale, looks like.
What else we got? Local students attend Scope event in Nashville. We got a lot, like I said, we got a lot of high school students that are represented here. Sarah West, Sarah Terry, Lena Davidson, Charlie's Spaldron, and sponsors Paulette Todd and Mary Lee King and Shannon Winningham. They're all going to Nashville.
And it's interesting. Shannon Winningham, I guess her dad has his ad in the paper last week where he won.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
And Mark Terry is pictured with his Scoutmaster Thomas Holmes of Troop 93 following a ceremony on Friday evening during which he was presented with an Eagle Scout Award.
Okay.
Oh, and of course, the annual Hee Haw event is set for Friday and Saturday. This had a lot of photos and a lot of information about the Hee Haw event. And then I feel like the first paper we did
had a full page
on the Hee Haw
from the
event
Hee Haw
from
event.
the early 1980s.
The pig or whatever that was singing on that.
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of people getting married. The Beth Cook and Jack Butts exchange wedding vows in a ceremony. Keaton Goodman vows set. Mrs. Maddie to wed.
Yep, to Robbie Burris,
Mhm.
Angie Young, and Jeff Spurgeon.
Yeah. Okay.
And then, of course, the Save-A-Lot, which this was Save-A-Lot's grand opening. And I believe it's in the spot where the big fire was 2 weeks ago that we covered.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
All right. We got the little people next.
yep. Lots of little people.
Yeah. Paige Jennifer Brooks celebrates her 3rd birthday on January 29th. Toby and Brandy Hudson are proud to announce the birth of their son, Braxton Wade. Recent arrivals also include Melena Kayla Jeffers. And hi, my name is Jordan Tyler Duncan, and I turned 3 years old today, March 30th. My proud parents are Chuck and Peggy Duncan.
Yeah, and then there's workshops for parents that are being held today, as well as several folks marked their. This guy had been retired from as a railroad conductor. Virgil Ross celebrated his 95th birthday with an open house at the Oneida City Park. Looks great for 95.
Right.
And let's see here.
Okay.
And then a bunch of people who were celebrating their 40th birthdays that looks like some of their brothers had put their.
Yeah. Lordy, sis, we've hit double 40. Y'all have a lot of twins in this county. Just saying.
Yeah.
Okay. What else we got?
Let's see, Piggly Wiggly. And then, again, more news about people who, Chris Hudson earned the USAA honors in math, and some folks that got together to observe their March birthdays.
Please get that in me. All right. What else we got?
More food.
A lot of ads.
A lot
in
of
this
grand
one.
openings.
A lot of grand openings. A lot of
And
honors.
Looks like Curly Sue was the movie that was starting at Showtime Videos.
Yeah, up there at the top, we've got an album release. Marvin West of Oneida has presented a framed copy of his new album, Time for Me to Fly, which was released on March 31st. Okay, way to go.
Yeah, said will be. Let's see that he's scheduled to appear on the with Phil Campbell from the TV show Hee Haw.
Huh.
Interesting.
All right, so we're honoring Latasha Bryant, Corey Long, welding.
Emily Stevens.
Yeah, welding students. So big day for getting out and recognizing a bunch of people in the community.
And JCPenney's having an ugly sneaker contest.
Ah,
Search for the worst looking pair of sneakers in town. I wonder if you just go and you tag that person, or I wonder how that works.
Yeah.
And then of course, here's some more folks, some kids from the first grade class of Lisa Hamilton at Birchfield. They meet their book it goals, and they got their pizza from Pizza Hut for reading books and meeting those goals.
okay. Got the Robbins Junior Beta Club inducts members up there at the top right. Very neat.
Yeah, a couple folks in there. I see. Let's see, Ron Bailey. He's the one. He makes our paracord crosses in our gift shop,
Mhm.
and so this was when he was, I guess, in 8th grade and a junior beta club member. So a lot of folks on here from Robbins Elementary School that joined the junior beta club.
Okay. All right. This next one is kind of interesting. Next page.
Yep.
There you go.
Yeah,
All right.
that
So
was
this
really
is the Scott County Boxing Club members who participated in a series of bouts at Elizabethtown. Say it for me. Elizabethtown on
Elizabethtown.
Elizabethtown Saturday are pictured above with their coach. And their coach there is Sheriff Laxton, Jack Laxton. So he actually was the sheriff here in the Scott County Jail for quite a long time. So he was also the boxing coach for the boxing club.
Yeah, if you watch some of our past podcasts, he served 2 terms, and he was also the mayor's great grandfather, correct?
Yeah.
Grandfather?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's also known for his boxing skills and training.
Okay.
All right.
Kind of rounds out that day. Again, April 2nd.
All right. Technology.
Yeah, right. So, all right. Thank you all for listening to that, because we kind of go through the history of that day. But as we said at the start of the show, we have a lot of stuff coming up here at the historic Scott County Jail. We're still honoring Women's History Month for the rest of the month. So we have different displays up that are kind of highlighted for women heroines here in Scott County, women criminals here in Scott County, women officers here in Scott County. So we've got a lot of that going on. Of course, we still have our flashlight tours. We've got our Ladies Fright that's still going on, the guided ghost hunts that we have. So a lot of spots open for March. So come on down and grab some tickets for those.
Yeah, still got some of those open for the end of the month. We also just put out the guided ghost hunts for April. We're going to be putting out the flashlight tours for April, because actually we put one guided ghost hunt out for mid-April. It booked up within just an hour. So so if you want to go on a guided ghost hunt with myself and Dr. Sumner, get in here and go to our events page and get those dates booked or those tickets booked up, because they're going pretty fast. We also have a couple other events that we actually just got set up today that we're really excited about. One of them is going to be on April 16th. And we absolutely love our bikers here at the historic Scott County Jail. And we're trying to get a lot of different events planned for our bikers and motorcyclists. And we're going to be having a blessing of the bikes on April 16th at noon, which that is Easter weekend. And so we're going to have a lot more information about that to follow. I've been talking to a specific chapter out of the Christian Motorcycle Association, and they're just finalizing some details, but we'll have that information here very, very soon. So plan to come out Easter weekend, April 16th, which is that Saturday at noon. Get your bike blessed, and who knows, we may have something else kind of interesting.
Yeah, a few other events that day as well. So even if you don't ride a bike, come on out. We'd love to see you. It's going to be a really fun day. We'll, make it a really cool event. So as Miranda said, April 16th, mark your calendars for Blessing of the Bikes. And our other motorcycle ride?
Yeah, so another motorcycle ride. We are going to be a stop on the Harold Young, the second annual Harold Young Memorial Scholarship. This is a scholarship that I've worked with the Masons, the Hillbilly chapter out of Robbins. So it's the Widow's Sons Masonic Riders Association, Hillbilly chapter, and myself, and then the community. We've come together and created a scholarship in honor of my dad. And so the funds from this scholarship that's raised, it goes to a student who's pursuing a career in the field of science. And so we're in the process now of selecting that student, and that, they'll be joining us that day. But the event is going to be on May 21st, and it's a dart run. So if you're a biker and you're familiar with a poker run, it's similar to that, but it's a game of skill versus a game of chance. And so you don't have to just be a biker. You can, all vehicles are welcome. And essentially what you do is you go to 3 different spots, play darts at those spots, and the person with the highest score wins. And so the historic Scott County Jail is going to be the first stop on that. And I believe we'll release the information. I can't remember if it's 20 or 25 per vehicle or per person, to play. We'll put all of that information out, but it will be starting at 10 o'clock on May 21st here at the jail. And then there'll be several different stops along the way. And we'll put more information out on that as it becomes available.
Yep. So please mark your calendars for those two interesting events. As Miranda said, we will be highlighting some other things that we've got in the works here for the spring and summer months. So we're really excited about some of the stuff that we have going on. Our gift shop is available online. As we mentioned last week, we do have long sleeve shirts now that has a great graphic of the jail on the back. We had a lot of interest in those shirts. We've actually mailed out several packages here in the last couple of days. So thank you everybody for your support on that. And that's pretty much it. We just hope everybody has a great week, and thank you for listening to the Jailhouse Informant Podcast.
Yeah, and we'll have next week's guest on. We're just waiting on some confirmations on that. Otherwise, we would announce who that's going to be, but that will be coming up next Monday night live. And so, like I said, just stay tuned throughout the week for any other announcements and stuff, because we do have a lot of really cool things planned here at the jail. So
thank you again to Shonda as our special guest tonight, and thank you for everybody who's watching. Have a great night.
Bye, everyone.